Hello everyone, my name is John Bussart. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. Help support servers, blade systems, storage, as well as networking technology solutions from HPE. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means with the management interface. Today we're going to continue on our discussion with HPE's Simplivity Hyper-Converged platform. Specifically, we're going to be looking at remote backup, or the site-to-site replication capabilities found within this solution. So remote backups or site-to-site replication rely on the backup policies that exist within the environment. So if you've seen my video on that, you'll have a good understanding of what kind of happens here. What's a little bit different is the way the environment gets configured. So within this slide, you'll see two sites, one in Boston and one in Tokyo, and each site has a couple of Simplivity hyper-converged nodes. And they are federated together as a part of the installation process. Now at each site as well, there's going to be vCenter incidences, and they're going to be connected through linked mode. So this is the VMware technology that allows you to join different incidents of vCenter into one management context. Once you have that set up in this fashion, then you're able to use the Simplivity backup policies in order to create backups or replication of virtual machines from one site to another. Now, to speak to this slide a little bit more, it's also done so, this replication is done so in a very efficient fashion across your WAN link. So that bandwidth is very valuable. We want to use up a lot of the space if we don't have to. So the way they kind of consolidate the information down from one site to another is through their data virtualization level. So if we look at VM1 as well as VM2, we'll see that within these virtual machines are some blocks of data, and that's represented again by the individual blocks that you see. Now the like data within the environment, the like blocks of data are represented by the colors, and that can all be consolidated down to single space on the back-end virtualized storage platform. Right, so this is helpful as far as consolidating the space. It kind of speaks to the deduplication and replication capabilities. So if I needed to replicate virtual machine 1 or VM1 from site 1 to site 2, what would happen is site 2 would examine what it has as far as duplicate blocks of data that already exist at the secondary site. And it will only make the request for the blocks of data that don't exist. Again, that's represented by the orange and the light gray blocks that you see. And only that information would be sent across the wire in a deduplicated and compressed fashion. Right, on an ongoing basis, whenever we took backups of the virtual machine from site 1 to site 2, it would be only the delta information that would get passed across the two sites. And this turns out to be a very effective way to transfer data between two sites, and I plan to show you that within this demonstration. So with all that being said, let's explore this within the management interface. So I'm logged into my vSphere web client. We can see my two virtual center incidences. So up here, it's my first one, and then down here is my second one. And again, they're connected through VMware's linked mode. Within this virtual center incident, I have this one cluster with these two hyper-converged nodes, ESX1 and ESX2. On my secondary site, and within its cluster, you'll see I have one Simplivity hyper-converged node. So you could certainly have a cluster of one at a secondary site, and a lot of people do this. They don't necessarily need the resiliency at their disaster recovery site that maybe they need at their main site. Now this is expandable as well. If at some point in time I wanted to expand the resources or create that level of availability, I could add another Simplivity node within this infrastructure. Okay. We're going to focus in on this virtual machine right here called Recover Me Remote. Now this virtual machine has a 100 gig operating system disk and a 1 terabyte data disk. On the back-end storage, it's consuming only about 3/4, maybe 2/3 of a terabyte of data. All right, so this is a 1 terabyte virtual machine that we're using. It's not fully filled, but it's got a pretty good amount of capacity in it. So we're going to use this virtual machine in order to be able to do some interesting things through these remote backups. So I have another video on backup policies. If you want to get into detail on those, I'd recommend going and look at that video. I'll give you a quick primer on them. So here I have backup policies listed. Right? Within these backup policies, I have sets of rules within them. So for example, this backup policy has 4 rules. So let's go in and edit that. And these rules state how virtual machines are backed up. So for example, if I open up this one, you'll see this will be my hourly backup. So I'm backing up this for any entity that uses this backup policy will back up a virtual machine every hour and retain those backups for a full day, and then back those information up to the local cluster that it sits on. Okay. Next, I have this. Right, so I'm backing up every day, so this would be my daily backup, and retaining those backups for an entire week, and again, I'm saving it to the local Simplivity cluster. Next, I have this entity, and this will be my weekly backup. So if I look under Advanced, you'll see I'm taking a backup every Saturday. I'm retaining those backups for 1 month. Again, I'm saving those locally. Finally, to round things out, I'm taking another backup. Again, I'm only doing it on the 1st. All right, so this will be my monthly backup. Right, I'm retaining those for a full year, and I'm saving those locally. All right, so the problem with this backup policy is everything's saved locally. So if something catastrophic happens at the main site, I would lose my information. So to protect myself against something like that, what I do is I create another rule. And we'll say I might want to, I don't know, we'll back up every 10 minutes, and we'll retain those backups for a full day. And I'll do that at my secondary cluster, or in my remote site. And I'll click OK. So in addition to making all those local backups, I'm also making a copy of data at my secondary cluster. And this is probably how you want to set up something like this if you're going to implement this within your environment. Right? So I'm going to cancel this. To make things a little bit simpler, I've created this backup policy down here. So let's open up this one. We'll edit this backup policy. And we'll look at this rule. All right, so I have one rule within this backup policy, and it says backup every 3 hours, retain backups for a week, and send them over to the secondary cluster. All right, so if the entity that uses this backup policy would back up in that fashion. Let's cancel this. Let's cancel this here. So where can I apply these backup policies? Well, in a variety of locations. So first, you can apply those backup policies to the data stores themselves. So any virtual machines that get created on these data stores will inherit these policies. So here's where you'd set that policy. You can see this guy, I have Simplivity 1 standard backup. Right. I could certainly change that if I felt like it. Right. And so this would be that standard backup that I showed you that had those 4 rules that was all local. And the same thing's true over here as well. If I right click down here, Simplivity Actions, set default backup policy, you can see I have that same backup policy set up. All right, so if I go back to this view, we're looking at this Recover Me remote virtual machine here. So with that being said, I should be able to find that within my backups. So let's go over to Configure. And then already selected is the HPE Simplivity Search Backups. So if I search Recover Me Remote, you'll see that no virtual machines pop up. It's certainly my search criteria works well. So if I search again, you'll see all the recovery machines kind of pop up. So what's kind of happening here? Right. Well, I could set these backup policies on the data store themselves, or I could change them by setting them on the virtual machines themselves. So if I right click down here, go down to Simplivity Actions, and I could click Edit Backup Policy, and you'll see that on this virtual machine I've got Remote Backup Policy Cluster 1 to Cluster 2. Remember, every 3 hours I'm replicating this machine from Site 1 to Site 2. So this one didn't have any local backup policy rule set on it. All right, so that means I should be able to go over to my secondary cluster. And again, we're under Configure and under HPE Search Simplivity Backups. We can see those virtual machines, those backups exist within this Simplivity cluster. Now that virtual machine doesn't exist over here yet, right, but its backups exist over here. All right, so we can do a variety of things with these backups as far as recovering them and replicating them. So first, what we're going to do is go back over to this Recover Me Remote. And remember, this is a 1 terabyte virtual machine that's using about this much space. So the first thing I'm going to do, well, actually, let's open this up and show you this is a valid machine that's running. Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is why don't we clone this virtual machine or create a completely new 1 terabyte virtual machine. And we'll give this machine a new name. Call it Recover Me New. And this machine's on, so we'll certainly do a crash consistent clone. You can see down here that that clone is happening. And it's going to be a rapid clone, so it's going to happen in a very efficient fashion. All right, so we can see that virtual machine is cloned, and it is a fully valid virtual machine. Right? Again, we've cloned about a 1 terabyte virtual machine very fast. So I'll power this guy on. And we'll open up a link to this machine. All right, this machine's booted up, so let's log in. And again, we can see this is the clone of the initial virtual machine. And obviously, I get the crash consistent message. Let's cancel out of that. Let's make some changes to this virtual machine. So let's personalize it. Maybe we'll use this backdrop on this machine. And maybe we'll create some new data. And we'll save that. All right, so quickly, let's take a look at the backup policy that was set on this virtual machine. Because it was created within the data store, you'll see that it's inherited my standard backup policy that I've set on the data store. So it's all a local backup. So I could certainly change this or edit and add a rule in the environment to create a remote replication of this or a remote backup. But I could also do this in an ad hoc method, and that's what I'm going to do for this demonstration. So we got this Recover Me New. We're going to right-click, go down to Simplivity Actions, and we're going to select Backup Virtual Machine. We'll call this Remote Backup 1. Instead of the local destination, I'm going to select the secondary cluster. Right, I'm going to click OK. You can see that backup happening. Now keep in mind that this was quickly cloned because it had many of the same blocks that were found within this virtual machine. And because this virtual machine is already replicated to this secondary site, those blocks of data already exist, so it was replicated very fast. And only the differences, only the changes that we made were replicated to the secondary site. So at this point, what I can do is we can power off this virtual machine hard. We can delete it from disk. All right, and then we can go over to the secondary cluster. And again, we're under Configure and Search Simplivity Backups. And if I change or assert by type, instead of being a policy-based backup, it was a manual-based backup. And there's that VM. All right, so I can right-click on that, We can select Restore Virtual Machine. Select where we want to restore it. Notice we can restore it back to the initial cluster if I felt like it. But we'll restore it to a data store that's on the secondary cluster, and we'll click OK. All right, now this virtual machine is available. Let's right click and let's power it on. Now keep in mind, again, this is a terabyte virtual machine. It's pretty much filled. So let's open up console to this system. And we'll log in. And we can see this is the same system. Obviously, we get the crash consistent message. Now we can change this guy again. And we create another document. So we'll change the system a little bit. Okay. All right, so the data is now changed. So again, I could back up this virtual machine back to the original site. Again, we'll take and put that on the first cluster. We'll click OK. All right, again, you can go over, we'll power off this virtual machine. And then we'll delete it. Right, again, if I go back to the main cluster, we can see our second backup exists. As a matter of fact, I can go over to the secondary cluster. What we'll do is we'll delete this backup. But you'll see I'll still be able to recover this virtual machine. So what we'll do is we'll do a couple recoveries. Let's see, let's restore this virtual machine, and we'll restore it to the secondary cluster. All right, so from this site over to this site, and then I can also take this and restore it to the local cluster as well. I'll do this guy. All right, so this virtual machine was recovered. It'll take a little bit more time at the secondary site, but it will come up very quick. Power on that virtual machine. See the secondary site has come up as well. So let's right click, power that guy on as well. Go over here, we'll open up a console. And again, we can log in. You can see all those changes. So we failed over and failed back, and obviously we get the crash consistent message. And the same thing's true for the secondary side over here. So if you think about it, I've cloned a virtual machine, created a brand new virtual machine. I've backed it up to the secondary site. I recovered it, failed it over, deleted it, and I recovered it to the primary site, including changing some of the data. Right? And again, this virtual machine is a 1 terabyte virtual machine. I've performed all these actions within the time that this video has been proceeding. Right, so the only other piece I would have to add to this is a manual process. I'd have to go through. So if this main site went down, and I had all these virtual machines being back up to the remote site, I'd have to go through and reanimate those virtual machines and pick and choose which virtual machines powered on first, such as DNS servers, DHCP servers, and things like that. Right, there is an automated way to do that, and that's through a product that Simplivity has called Rapid DR. And I'll spend another video talking about that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for more videos.